So after several takes, I think we might have a video tutorial. I'm using a EPS, an imported EPS as my reference, an EPS of a watch. It's a basic watch and it's one method of modeling. In Cinema 4D version R20, there are newer versions, but R20 is where they introduced the volume builder and volume mesher. In other videos I'll cover other methods of modeling. This is just one method. Cinema 4D, bring in an EPS. You can use other reference, you can use image reference if you want. And EPS I'll cover in another tutorial, creating an EPS or importing an EPS from Adobe Illustrator or Affinity Designer or any other vector creation applications. That's for another tutorial, but of course you can email me if you want to. Let's get into this modeling this basic watch. Here we go. For this tutorial I've made a rough EPS, encapsulated PostScript file, which I've imported and you can see here on screen. Of course, you don't have to use Adobe Illustrator for this. You could use Affinity Designer, for example. You'll see that this EPS is made up of multiple paths. So let me copy one of the paths and place it outside of the main EPS. And of course, to hide it again or to stop it rendering, I would create these red dots, top and bottom. You'll see the option is a green dot, and that's a forced render. That'll come in later. Right, let's just work on this path. Firstly, we need to close this path, and then we can create a loft. I select the point mode firstly and then the pen tool, and then we can close up our path and we can create a loft. We can copy the X and Y point position of the existing points and use those to paste for our new points so that we line up. So once we have our points lined up on the X and Y axis, we don't need to worry about the Z axis, that's the depth. But once we've got our points lined up, we're ready to loft. And loft is one of the options that we have. Let's go to our perspective window and we can have a better look at what the loft has done. It's created a shape, but I would suggest doing a lot of cleaning up. We need some neat polygons, I reckon. So these lines that you're seeing on this loft at the moment are pseudo lines. They don't really exist until we convert this, and we're going to convert it to current state of object or make it editable. I think in this case we'll make it editable, and then we start to clean up. We start to delete some of the diagonal lines and put in some of the polygon lines, make it a clean polygon shape. This little bit is just showing you how I start to add some of the polygon lines and start to delete some of the diagonal lines. So we continue cleaning up, adding more polygons, getting rid of diagonals, and then we find there's a problem. There's a problem with one of these diagonals at the corner. The moment I delete them, I lose my corner. So let's find the offending diagonal, undo that, delete those ones, or dissolve them. Yes, that little one is the offending one, so we're going to leave it for now. We're going to add more polygons, and if I hold down the Shift button, I can strain it to upright or horizontal, but it can be edited. Those points can be moved later anyway. Carry on deleting or dissolving these diagonals. Bear in mind that this is going to be smooth and there's going to be bevels added on later. So as much cleaning up as you can do. There's a funny little element here which I'm going to delete. And I'm going to delete some of these lines. So let's undo that, some of these diagonals, some of the corners. Because when we smooth it, it'll come back. A lot of that smoothing will create the corner again quite smoothly. That's as far as I'm going to take it. I'm going to copy and paste it, drag that, well, connect the two of them and drag it, but make sure your normals are aligned or your polygons are aligned. So we're going to reverse that one, and then we're going to bridge. This is bridging the lines. You can bridge points, you can bridge polygons, but it's easier, well, this is easier, certainly doing the lines. Leaving the corners, because we can do close polygon hole. I'm closing some of these, probably don't need to, but I'm going to close some of them anyway. A lot of work. Well, you'll find there is quite a bit of work. The more you do, the better, quite frankly. You can see some of the gaps. I'm going to use close polygon hole in those gaps. There we go. And I'm closing those holes as well. I need to delete or hide one of these quarters because I'm seeing one over the other. Let's reverse normals. Make sure we've got the same both sides. If I delete this one little diagonal, I should be all right. So let's jump ahead to this more finished section. We're going to carry on bending it and working it as much as we can, and then we're going to mirror it to make a bigger object, a bigger section. Doing a lot of this sizing and modeling and thickening up now so that we don't have to deal with it later when we've got multiple polygons, because it'll be more difficult, or generally it's more difficult to do it. But obviously there's a fine line between overdoing this or underdoing this part. Just adding a bit of transparency to the color so I can see right through it, and I can see through my object to see what's happening behind there. And I decided to put these points on the same axis, the same y-axis, because I think we've got too much of a slope going on here and it's not really going to help me in the long term. So yeah, I copy the y-axis from the good point and apply it to the bad point so that they are aligned, they are on the same axis. And that's pretty much it, I think. We're just going to do this one here. Don't worry about the bend. We can always work that out and make it look a little visually a little better. At the moment it looks a little wobbly. Yes, checking your polygons that they are aligned again. It's important. Now we go back to our EPS and we cross-reference against our original rough. We might not follow it exactly, but it does give us an idea of what the watch will look like or how we should model it. Now we're getting it ready so we can start the mirroring process, which I'll probably do in the next video. And the Boolean as well. They call it bool in Cinema 4D, but we're going to Boolean as well, and we're going to use it as a drilling out. I'll show you in the next video. As you can see, I'm doing quite a bit of cleaning up. It's aligning points and I'm readjusting the points and deleting the points and moving them. In the next video, I'll show you another method, a method of modeling, working from a cube and extruding it and creating multiple polygons as I go. It's another way of working. One is not better than the other necessarily, and some people prefer this way, some people prefer the other way, which I'll be demonstrating. And of course, there are other ways of working as well, depending on the version of cinema that you've got. So while the interface will change in different 3D applications, the principle will be pretty much the same, where you'll have extrusions or you'll have points, you'll have polygons. Some of the terminology will be different. You might come across tessellation, for example. But regardless of the application or the 3D application that you're working in, you will see some similarities. The terminology might be different, but the principle is the same. Cinema 4D I find is one of the easiest learning curves. I've worked in Alias Maya, or I think it's owned by 3D Max these days. I've worked in Lightwave, I've worked in a number of others, but Cinema 4D seems to be improving all the time, and for me, it seems to be one of the lowest learning curves. Right, getting back to our model, this is the part where we're starting to mirror. And mirror really is a duplication and a joining of the shapes. So it's taking the one shape that you've got and you're going to create a duplicate and you mirror or attach it or join it. So you go left or right or up or down. And you'll see that it doesn't automatically work. So sometimes you'll need to do it once or twice. Make sure it's connected. So I test it afterwards. I pull it left and right to make sure that it is joined. So this time it is joined. So we're happy with that. Now we're going to select all and we're going to do the same up and mirror it upwards. Check that it's joined. Yes, it's joined. So now we have our object and we're ready for the next part. So we're getting the shape ready to boolean, or bool as they call it. So I'm going to create a cylinder, and the cylinder will be used as a drill. It's going to drill a hole through our shape that we've got. I'm just showing here how you can move the axis without moving the object. So if you click on this tool, you can move the axis to the position that you want, and then obviously you take it off again and you will move the whole object. Now I can create a primitive cylinder which I can adjust its size, etc. This is going to be used for the boolean or the bool operation later. And in the next video I'll show you how we boolean, but what I'm discovering now is I need to work on some of the points and refine some of the points. Like this, for example, I've got something sticking out, so let me quickly get some of these points more refined. Yep, quite a bit of adjusting and shaping, which we probably wouldn't have with our extruded polygon, our extruded cube. Some of these are not critical because I'm very closely going in, so it's not really that critical. The eye won't pick it up but some of them really need adjusting, there's no question. At this point I decide to delete and remirror because I've got some of the points not working the way I want to. And of course you can delete as you will, so I'm going to delete all of this and go back to our original quarter so that as much of our shape is defined or correct as possible. Yes folks, once again I'm adjusting and realigning some of the points. It's pretty much the more you do now, the less you're going to have to do later. And of course, we're going to remirror some of the shapes yet again before I end this part of the video. I reckon this is a good place to end this part 1 video, and please join me in the second part. We'll carry on.